Hello there, I'm Moldy, as you can see, and as well as messing around with the Onyx Cinder quite a bit, I've also been working on a few LEGO Star Wars Skeleton Crew mock builds. The first one that I've got here built is the Pirate Skiff from the end of Skeleton Crew. We see a bunch of these fly down to At-Atin, and whilst I would love to build an At-Atin mock to go with these, perhaps some scenery or a building from the children's home world, I have here the pirate skiff with Vane taking charge, and perhaps we'll get onto my theories with Vane at the end of the video. But I filled this up with the crew of other Mandalorian pilots. We've got the two from the Mando ATST, and then the pirate accompanying Vane from the Snub Fighter, which, by the way, goes really well with the Onyx Cinder on display if you were considering picking up the set. But this ship does not only look like the Mantis when the wings are folded up, which is definitely a mock I'm going to have to work on sometime soon. But also has a ton of play features thanks to these cannons that are positioned around each quarter of the ship. So let's take a closer look. The first thing you'll notice about this mock is that the color scheme of it uses quite heavy black colors and then dark bluish gray as well, just to stop it looking like a complete black build, because it would definitely get lost in the exposure. But this does differ to the dark bluish gray mostly build with the light bluish gray pieces that we see on both the Onyx Cinder and the Snub Fighter. In fact, the Onyx Cinder even has quite a bit of white showing quite visibly on the top of the model. The reason I went with black and dark bluish grey is because it matches the dark, really dark colour themes of the show, and I think better represents the scenes that these ships come from, whilst the ships themselves might be just a dark grey, which is hard to show up in the night, which is definitely, by the way, the in-universe, all pirate ships are so dark. When it comes to playing with it as a LEGO set, all grey builds just aren't great, and whilst black doesn't make it any better, I definitely think it fits into that hidden whilst it's dark in the night that we see at the end of the show. On the bottom of this, we see how the ship is able to fly through the sky. We've got a few different engines and some sort of repulsor lifts that are so commonly used in Star Wars to explain exactly how ships can fly when, as humans, we haven't quite got there yet. But I've just done this with some red 1x2s and 1x1s. And if you would like instructions to this model, let me know down in the comments, because I haven't actually made instructions for this build just yet, which I know is quite shocking. But this is not going to be the last Skeleton Crew mock I build. Well, at least I hope not anyway. Like I said, to pilot the ship, we do have the pirate Vane and a few other minifigures from The Mandalorian, but they were holding these turrets still, as all four of these turrets are able to spin positioned on one of those turntables that we saw so many on the Onyx Cinder. Hello there again, it's a bit later on in the day and I'm editing this video and I realised I never showed you a good look at the turrets and just how cool they actually are, because the minifigures are positioned, there's a bit of space, there's a tile in front of each of these turrets, so you can actually angle the minifigures more than just the 90 degrees you're used to in LEGO builds. But when the minifigures are away, they rattle a little bit and are very loose, they can spin, they can get knocked, and it probably means they can fall off a lot easier. So I have made sure and modified the joint on these turrets like 5-10 times before I found a connection I was happy with that allowed the turret to fold down on the other side of the ship. There are 4 turrets, like I said. This one does not have a minifigure, so I folded it down, and even the front one can fold down over the front of the ship. Same goes with the turret on the back. Like I say, all 4 of these can lock in, and there's little to no room for them to wiggle around. So if you are wondering about the turrets, how strong they are very strong. You can spin them just by smacking them, and if they smack into other ships, they're going to be perfectly fine. But if you want the utmost security, you could probably even spin them into the ship and secure them for transport. So I thought you'd all want to know that, and now we can continue with the video. Similarly to how each of the turrets on that ship were built, we have a few different round 2x2 plates and these turrets sticking out. But I've also added a control panel in the back and a little windscreen 1x1 cheese slope just to protect whoever's shooting the weapon from returning fire. We also have a small flashlight clipped onto each of the turrets. Like we see in the show, there are so many lights built into this model, and though I couldn't hide all of the lights around the ship, I had to include the ones on each of these turrets because I thought they looked so cool. I've taken some creative liberties when it's come to designing this vessel, as we don't see a control unit when the skiff is viewed from above, and it just looks like an empty ship. So I have taken the similar control unit to the ones we see in the skiffs from Return of the Jedi and manned it so that someone can be flying this ship, and it's not just on some autopilot or there's a little control panel to the side of the skiff. I think it matches up to the other designs. And as for standing this model on your displays, we have 4 feet positioned exactly where you see them in the show, which are some permanent landing gear which enable it to stand up just enough for the wings to stay flat down. In fact, they're not even flat down, as they are at an angle, and whilst they do touch the floor or the table display surface that you have the ship stood on, they give that ship that nice profile and silhouette, similar to what you see with the skiffs from Return of the Jedi, but just different enough to be its own ship. For the engines just at the back, I have taken these straight from the Snub Fighter, as they not only look straight from the Snub Fighter, but it makes sense that they'll be using the same engines across multiple ships, especially if they're found engines that they rely on. And I've also shaped the back of it near the engines very similar for that exact reason. I'm sure in universe, whoever's given them these engines is getting paid quite a handsome amount. So with Vane leading the crew here on their pirate skiffs, and with him ordering the Snub Fighters to be sent out earlier on in that episode, and standing so close to Gunter, who was piloting the main frigate, do we think that Vane is going to assume control after the demise of Brutus and now lead his own pirate army? When introduced to Vane in The Mandalorian, he seemed to be just a common pirate amongst the rest of the crew under the one captain, and I think because he was surrounded by so many of the same species, it made it so easy to assume. But he's slowly been climbing the ranks behind the scene, and though they are now under the capture of the New Republic, could Vane have escaped their grasp once again? Or will Vane perhaps lead some sort of uprising? We've seen it in The Mandalorian before. They've gone back and freed prisoners, and other teams have been trying to free the New Republic prisoners. And so far, everything we've seen has been somewhat successful. So I cannot wait to see Vane's return to hopefully the big screen with a Mandalorian movie coming up. There's definitely a bigger role in store for Vane than we know. And now he's got a whole army of pirates at his beck and call. So this guy is going to be really dangerous. But that is just my personal theory. Leave your theories down in the comments, and when Vane eventually makes his return to our screens, we can come back and see how correct we all were. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Let me know what you think of the ship as well down with your theories, and thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. May the Briggs be with you always. Meow.